why I should have to pay one person at the prevailing wage rate much higher than another person that's doing the exact same job. Now, as far as the public sector union issue, I'm opposed to public sector unions. I think it's inherently unfair that a public sector union is going to negotiate a contract with the very people that are going to pay them in the future and that they support politically. This needs to stop. It's not to the benefit of the American citizen or the Nevada state taxpayer. So we should not encourage public sector unions. We should try to eliminate them and deal with them as much as possible to get their wages down, get their benefits more in line with the private sector.
Thank you, Commander.
Government unions have no place with government workers. There needs to be unions, those belong in the private sector, period. So we need to start addressing why they came about and start figuring out how to eliminate them, because government is nothing more than a reflection of what society allows it to be. We are the ones that dictate as civilians, as community people, what we are going to allow our government to do. So there should be no place for them. That's a very simple answer, and we should just hold the line with it. They don't belong anywhere in the government. They belong only in the private sector, because then it's the private sector that needs to deal with it. When it comes to the prevailing wage, from sitting back in the Pentagon again, I go back a little bit to my military days. Some of the most dedicated and hardworking people I have ever seen in my life are those civilians that work within our federal government. The one problem that you have, though, with government workers, whether it is a local level, a state level, or a national level, is there is no ability to easily and effectively demand accountability for their workforce so that the people who are the deadwood that need to be cut from the government roles can be eliminated quickly and effectively, just like they do in the business world. Those two things, government workers and private sector workers, when it comes to accountability, need to be the same. They shouldn't have the union protections they have. They shouldn't have some of the additional protections to where they are moved around within the government because it's too hard to get rid of someone and it's easier to transfer someone. Anyone that's had to deal with government workers knows that that's a problem. So bring back accountability so that government workers can be held accountable for their performance and rewarded, for their non-performance and fired, just like they do in the private industry.
Thank you. Gentlemen, this comes from Marine. We'll start with you, Mr. Fasano. With more and more people drawing unemployment, as well as receiving food stamps and other government programs, can we as a nation continue to sustain ourselves when we have more takers and makers in Nevada and at the national level? Mr. Fasano.
Short answer is no. We can't sustain this. What we have to do is put people back to work.
I like that. That's a prize. We have a prize for the shortest answer we do, right? Right, Commander, you're up next.
Well, I don't know if I can work in the shadow of that quick short answer. All of us, I think, realize it comes down to personal accountability and responsibility. Working with people, I am a firm believer that every single individual wants the opportunity and the conditions to where they can provide for themselves and their families. And it is creating those conditions that allow them to work, gets people off of those food stamps, off of the welfare rolls, so that we create the hand-ups, not the handouts. People do not want to be given something for free. When you give somebody something for free, what's it worth to them? Nothing. If they have to work to get it, if they have to contribute to their community or a job or something, then it becomes valuable to them. Whether that is in the food stamp world or whether it is working for the government that might be providing something, whether it is low-income housing or whatever it might be. So these programs, while they must exist for those that through conditions in life have been put in circumstances where they need that temporarily, it should be just that, temporary. It should not be permanent, it should not be long-term, and again, we should be creating the conditions in government where people can assume the personal accountability and responsibility for the future of their lives, because they will want to succeed, which gets them off those roles.
Thank you. Mr. Amodei.
Thanks. I told you I'd tell you the truth, and Tim's right. That's the truth. I would only add to it this. What we are experiencing right now is a function of a failed stimulus and recovery program. And because of the failure of people to tell you the truth, you have this quest to continually extend benefits in the face of a program that didn't work. And what you need is the truth to say, this doesn't work. We pivot to the private sector enablement to create those jobs so that you don't have to continue providing in the face of these economic situation that has been in large part exacerbated by the policies of the present administration.
Thank you. Gentlemen, this question comes from Janine. Commander, we'll start with you. There's been a strong cry to audit the Federal Reserve, but nothing's happened to date to actually make an audit happen. Do you agree? And if so, what do you plan to do about it as a member of Congress?
Federal Reserve must be audited from the ground up. Unless we know where the money is going, how it's being created, why it's being created, and where it is being spent, we are not going to have any accountability for our future. So you go back and you just start creating the conditions. That's easy to say. It's a political statement out here. The reality of it is when you go to Washington, we began to move toward this process in 2010 when we started to put people into Congress. It is going back there, starting on September 14th, and being able to find those people that you can work with, building that coalition of like-minded people first in Congress, at the House, then at the Senate, and begin to push for it and explain to the American people why it is important for us to have that audit and why it should be done. We should absolutely do it, because without transparency in our government, we as a nation are going down the wrong path. This administration is content to do it. We need to draw the line.
Thank you. Mr. Amodei.
Thanks, Trevor. First of all, Ron Paul is right about that. It does need to be audited. Second of all, you need to take a look at the role of the House in our constitutional framework in terms of appropriating money and also in terms of the role of Congress coining money. We need to revisit what the real authority is there legislatively, because there is some. The other point that's important is September 14th, there will be some pretty important gut check times for whoever sits in that seat. Times on debt, potential raising the debt limit, times on saying no and changing the direction. And this is one of those areas where you say, well, if you vote to audit the Fed, and what happens if the Senate doesn't do that, or what happens if they do, and the President vetoes that? I think that's one of the things where you have to go back there and frame of mind and say, am I willing to stand tough on things like that, where it's like, these are the consequences potentially. I think you have to seriously evaluate those and say, yeah, I'm going to stand there. What if the debt limit doesn't increase? What if the Senate pushes back? Fight for that, and knowing that when you come back here at the end of those 14 months, if it was wrong, somebody else is going to serve the job. But you have to be willing to say, I've got to strengthen my convictions that going down the same path is not going to produce a different result, and I'm either going to win the battle on auditing the Fed or holding the line on the deficit, or they're going to carry me out on my shield, and I'm going to be accountable to the people who sent me there. And if that was the wrong thing, then guess what? Somebody else is going to be there. But you have to have that clearness of mind to stay the course on issues like this, knowing that you're not going to have smooth sailing in the other house, at least for the first 14 months, or from the administration.
Thank you. Mr. Hassan.
Well, you're not going to get a short answer, unfortunately. Auditing the Fed. First off, we have to be honest with each other. We have to understand that the Fed has been in place for 100 years, as of 1913. They've been responsible for so many economic downturns in this country, it's unbelievable. So yes, we need to audit the Fed. But also, when we audit the Fed, we have to hold down the organization accountable for their actions over the last 100 years. The economic downturns that we have been experiencing in this country could have easily been dealt with sound money policy, which is a constitutional requirement of the United States Congress. So yes, I'm in favor of auditing the Fed, but I'm also in favor of repealing the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 and restoring this republic to a sound money policy, and then we can start growth in this nation the way our founders intended.
Thank you. Gentlemen, last question of the question and answer portion. Mr. Amodei, we'll start with you. This comes from Nancy. What one thing would you do at the national level that would be the most beneficial to the valley?
Concentrate on federal lands issues in terms of access to our public lands, in terms of shortening permitting times for exploration for minerals, shortening up the time it takes to process through the grazing rights, the agricultural issues. When you're talking about economic recovery in a state that is 85% owned by the federal government, you must be aggressive in terms of dealing with the landlord when you talk about that. So we need to increase our ability to, and by the way, I think it's possible to use the resources of this state in an environmentally responsible manner. It is okay to utilize our energy resources. There is such thing as responsible use of energy resources. So my number one priority would be in the state that's 85% owned by the federal government is concentrate on those public lands issues in terms of access, permitting, environmental regulations, all those sorts of things that are being demagogued right now for the sake of political correctness and ignoring a whole heck of a lot of science that indicates that it is absolutely possible to utilize those public lands in an environmentally and economically responsible way.
Thank you. Mr. Hassan.
What would I be most focused on? First off, the 10th Amendment. I think we need to restore this republic to the principles of federalism. Nevada is a sovereign state, and we need to really, truly understand that we are the masters of our own destiny in this state. Second issue that I think I would really concentrate on is the rule of law. That is one issue that has been very big with me for the last couple of years. I've done a lot of research, I've done a lot of reading. I've come to the understanding that the founders were very intelligent when they crafted the Constitution. And they intended the rule of law to be the rule of law. The Republic had to have the rule of law in place for it to succeed. Third issue that I think I would be more focused on is jobs. We need to put Nevadans to work. This is the priority that my campaign espouses, and we enjoy because of our experience in putting people to work. If we don't put these people to work, our fellow citizens in the state of Nevada, we cannot make the economy better in the state of Nevada or in the nation. And then one of the last issues that I think I'd like to concentrate on is getting the Fed out of the management business of Nevada lands. I think they can go back and manage their own properties. Nevada's people in Nevada can manage our own properties.
Thank you. Commander, you have the last word.
I look to the future. I look to the potential of what we have and what we could do. We've got industries that have sustained this state for over a century, but it is time to look forward. I have a 4-point plan, and it deals with energy. Alternative energy may be good, but it isn't going to provide the backbone. When you look at what Nevada can do here, first and foremost, we have an issue that has been a political football, that has not been dealt with the facts, and that is Open Yucca Mountain. That facility needs to be done because first and foremost, it is a national security issue for the nation. Second, we can provide long-term sustainable energy for the entire nation safely if we build a reprocessing facility in conjunction with Yucca Mountain and make it operate. We have seen it operate successfully in France. There is no reason we can't use that technology that has now been updated and used here, and we can take care of the nation's energy needs for the rest of the century and beyond. Third, power plants. When you look at the Nevada test site, now the Nevada National Security Site, out there, we could build 1, possibly 2 plants, build them on the template of what the Palo Verde plant is outside of Phoenix, 3.3 gigawatts from 1 plant, providing power for 4 million homes. It can power Nevada, and the excess can go to other states. We have the ability to do that with modern technology and the water that is available through effluent, either coming up to Las Vegas or the aquifer that is over alkaline right on the site itself. So with technology that can be built, that way we can take the next step. There is no reason why our education system for the future can't become the standard bearer for the nation with nuclear power so that we become the nuclear center of excellence for the nation. We are taking the next step forward. We had the Mackey School of Mines. It was the best in the world. There is no reason why Nevada can't do it. So open Yucca, reprocessing facility, build nuclear power plants, and let's set the standard for the world for nuclear energy.
Thank you. Gentlemen, we are going to take 2 questions from the audience and Jerry's audience. And folks, again, thank you very much for coming tonight. And the candidates, we thank you as well.
This is good, isn't it? Are you learning a lot? Yes, I am too. Okay, who has a question? Someone have a question? Okay, I'm going to come back there, and I'm going to give you the microphone. Come on, meet me halfway. Come on. Okay.
Mr. Fasano, let's start with you on this one.
I have a question. We haven't heard anything about how our